Hi, this is Keith Wooden, and welcome to Story Mosaics. Man, we have been having some fun over these last few weeks. I talked to you about something that's taking place that's a little bit unique in that we're creating community where people are interacting with one another. And I can't wait for you to see the next few weeks as those unfold as well, because we're going to see more and more people telling their parts of their life and interacting and asking questions. And so that has just been fantastic. But there's also something new coming, and that is that people are starting to ask, how do I tell my story? And today is a prime example because we've got a guest here with us today that came to me in a very unique way. A friend of mine, Trisha, had said, "Hey, I have a friend that has this unique life story. And how would she ever tell her story on Story Mosaics?" Now, Trisha lives out in Idaho or Iowa, one of the 2. We'll figure that out in just a moment when we get our guest on here. And my guest is in Henryville, Indiana. So what a combination of different ideas. But I want to first of all just introduce you to Denise Howell from Henryville, Indiana. And thank you, Denise, for being here. We're so excited about you being with us.
Hi. I'm
Hey, you know what? First of all, thanks for being willing to tell your story, and it came to me in this unique way that I mentioned to you through Trisha, and Trisha knew you, and but I want to tell people how they specifically can grab a hold of their stories and let us know because if they will go on storymosaics.com and there's a place where they can tell their story or they can at least get in touch with me and say, I've got a story I want to tell. And then I can do the same thing I did with you, Denise, as I gave you a call and we touched base with one another. I listened to your story and you happen to have yours in writing at that point. So I read through your story and here we are sitting across the table from one another. So I'm so excited. And actually, here's the fun thing too, and I want people to understand this. I said she's sitting across the table with you, and you might think she is, but she's actually in a library in Henryville, and I'm here in Anderson. It works just perfect. So, welcome, welcome, welcome.
I'm so glad to be here. I love stories. I love what you're doing, and
Oh,
I
that is so neat.
thank you.
Yeah, so the story that you shared there was such a unique story, and I'm just gonna sit back and relax as you tell a story. But because there's a few times that I'll probably try to make sure I'm understanding because this is hard to believe that you did some of these things. Yes, that's exactly how you should respond. So tell me the story of Messiah.
Oh, well, it's not one of my prouder moments, but in a way, it kind of is. Um, I know you can probably relate to this. If any of your audience has ever been so exhausted and fatigued that all of a sudden, like all of their common sense just kind of disappears, it was one of those kind of situations. Here's what was going on. It was all the way back in 1996, and it was in December, the first week of December, and it was a few months after I was married to my husband, Steve. And I love the because I love Christmas. And my family for years has celebrated Advent, not just at church, but in our home. And we had Advent wreaths and we followed some really, really personal, wonderful traditions. And I remember the first Sunday of Advent being really kind of special because there was a prayer that was always kind of the kickoff to Advent. And it starts out, "Oh, stir up our hearts, O Lord." And I remember the words to that. And on this particular week in 1996, I was home by myself in the morning. My husband had just taken off for work. And I thought about that prayer. And
Mm.
honestly, Keith, it was like the Christmas spirit was burning in my heart like an ember. I just knew, you know how it is. The whole point of Advent is to get our hearts ready for Jesus and the season ahead. And you know what? Shouldn't every day be an Advent? Shouldn't we always be getting our hearts ready for Jesus?
I love that. Thank you for saying that.
Uh, well, it was just that kind of a day. And here's what I wanted to do. I had been steeped in tradition in my family. I come from a really fun family. My mom's side of the family is all Italian. My dad, he's from the hills of North Carolina, and quite a storyteller himself. But I just wanted my own tradition that I could do with my new husband in our home that would be ours. And so I was just kind of asking God, what's it going to be? It doesn't have to be anything difficult, God, just something. And now I need to frame this a little bit because we lived out in the middle of nowhere. Now it's somewhere. It was Westfield, which is very developed now, but back then there wasn't a lot in our area. And the road we lived on was a county road. And my husband never decorated the outside of the house for Christmas because there was no traffic. However, that year, the county repaved our road because there was a new golf course that had just gone in down the road. And they made the road nice for the golfers. So we were getting traffic. And even though it was December, there were people trying to get that one last round of golf in before the bad Indiana weather. And we had a couple of new neighbors that had moved in a mile or so down the road. So there was a little bit more traffic. And I got this idea. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
I wanted to spell out a word on the side of our big old Indiana red barn, a Christmas word. But I didn't want it to be a word that was kind of overused. Like I didn't want to use Noel, for example. Not that Noel is a bad word, but I mean, I just wanted something more personal.
A little more unique.
Yeah. So I decided on the word Messiah. Can you believe it? I mean, word Messiah. And I was going to plaster this word on the side of our barn. Now,
I hope you had a big barn.
we did. It was huge. It was an old Indiana barn. It was 100 years old. It
Wow.
sat on the highest elevation in that part of the county within about a 15-mile radius. Now, all of the farmers in our area kind of envied us for our barn. And I didn't know much about barns, but it was kind of cool. And it was a landmark. People knew it. They'd say, "Well, just go down to the big red barn and turn left." And it was a landmark. So anyway, I decided I was going to put the word Messiah on the side of this barn. And I went to work right away. I thought I got to get this whole thing done before Steve gets home from work because I just wanted him to be so surprised. I wanted him to see it when he got home. So I took off and went to the store and I bought a whole bunch of those little bitty white Christmas lights and like hundreds of them. And I came home and I unloaded everything in one of the empty stalls in our barn.
Mm.
Now, it had been an unusually warm day for December, so I was geared up. I was ready to get it done. And I needed to figure out some logistics. Like I didn't want to just slap those strings of lights up on the barn. I wanted it to look really nice. So I decided that I would try to find something to anchor those lights to. And when I got in the barn, I found a roll of fencing. It was about maybe 35 feet long, 40 feet long, and it was about 4 feet high. And I thought, this is perfect because I could actually place the light bulbs right where I want, put them in place, and then we could hang it on the barn.
Oh, that's perfect idea. Way to go.
Isn't that good?
Yes.
Engineer I am. So it would be perfect. And then get this, at the end of the holiday, we could take it off the barn, gently roll it up, store it in the barn. This was a tradition after all. I was starting a tradition. So we would just be able to use it from year to year and it was perfect. So I set about wiring these little lights onto this long, stretched out roll of farm fencing that was out in our barn. And I'm telling you what, it was a big project. Now I'm a little bit of a perfectionist, but God's working on me, okay? But
Okay.
but here's what I wanted to do. I wanted each little light to be perfectly placed. I didn't want some close together and some far apart. I wanted it to be perfect. Not only that, I wanted the letters to be big. The fence was 4 feet high, so I thought I could make really good 3 foot letters. And that way, when it's up on the barn, people can see it from a long way off as they're driving down the road. So I was going to be picky. I was just going to be really picky about it. Not only that, I hope this isn't confusing, but I wanted the letters to be nice. Like the M was going to be straight, just like your logo was going to be really nice. And and then I didn't want light showing between the M and the E because I thought it looked sloppy.
Yeah, it would.
Yeah. So I decided I'd look for some masking tape or something to cover up those little
Oh my goodness.
and between the E and the S and so on. So I got to work. It was on the ground. I was bent over. I wanted those little lights to stay in place year after year. So I cut pipe cleaners in half and I actually wired each and every light to this cross to the cross wires on that fence, one at a oh my goodness. It it took me 4 hours.
Oh, I'm thrilled that it just took you 4 hours because that is a huge task.
It was huge. And I have to be honest, it was warm when I started, but a couple of hours into it, I noticed that a cold front had moved in and there was gusts of wind like bursting through the slats in the barn and the metal roof was like popping and slapping above me. So it was like there was something going on outside. I was too focused. And I'm like, it doesn't matter. I'm going to get this done. So I got all the wires in place. And then I stood up, and I'm telling you what, I had the worst pain hit my back. I had been bent over all that time, and I kind of stood up, and it was like I could hear my vertebrae clicking, click, click, click. I stood up, and it was okay because now all the lights were wired into place. And now I looked at my watch and I thought, oh, wow, so much time has gone by. I've got to work quickly because in December it starts getting dark early. And not only that, but I wanted this thing done before Steve got home. So I lugged this big wire fence out into the barn lot. And it was way heavier than I ever imagined. It was
I was gonna ask you how could you lift that by yourself and drag it out of there?
because I'm doing this because I knew it was something I could do that would be a blessing to my husband, and I thought it would honor God. So I drug this thing out. Now, if you can imagine this huge red barn on this hilltop, I laid the fence out in front of it, and my goal, I wanted to hang it up. Now we had, it was the roof was at a tilt, and so along the spans of the barn, just under the eaves is where I wanted to hang this banner sign, and it would be up high above the doors on the barn, and it would show for miles. I was so excited.
And you
So,
have 12 people now helping you, right?
no,
This is nuts.
it's me.
Just you.
So I thought, okay, I can do this. I can do this. After all, it was a God thing,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
no matter what.
It's a God or an insanity thing. Sometimes the 2 merge. It's a little confusing.
Well, I told fatigue was going to be a part of this. And so I was feeling a little tired, but I wasn't about to quit. I ran, I ran to the barn and grabbed my husband's 40-foot extension ladder, and I drug that thing up the side of the hill to the top of the barn lot and through the gate. And I don't know how, because my back was throbbing, but I managed to wobble that big old ladder up onto the side of the barn, and I got it into place somehow.
Goodness.
Then I thought, okay, I I'm ready. I'm going to hang this thing. I needed nails, and I was getting ready to run to the garage to get what I needed, hammer and nails and stuff. And then something happened. It started to rain.
No way. You did not you were oblivious to this the whole time you were putting it together inside?
Well, it was just cold, and I thought I can deal with
Oh.
cold, but it started to rain. And I'm not kidding, Keith. It was not one of those little misty kind of rains. It was one of those Noah kinds of rains. Oh my goodness, I couldn't believe it. I ran to the garage. We have an old rain slicker that we kept out there, this big yellow slicker. And I thought, I'll put it on, it'll keep me kind of dry. But I couldn't find the hood to it. But my hair was already wet anyway, so I thought, that doesn't matter. I filled the pockets of it with 6 penny nails, and I grabbed a hammer from the workbench, and I ran back out into the rain to my work project. And thought, okay, I'm going to get this thing up there. I'm not sure how, but I was going to climb up that ladder. I hooked my arm inside the corner of the Messiah sign. Okay, now it's heavy, and
Yes.
start pulling myself and lugging this thing all the way up as high as I could to the very top of the barn. I was holding on with one hand. I had the wire from the fencing on the inside of my elbow, and I was able to get the hammer out of my belt loop.
I
I
love this, Denise, because I can picture all of this taking place and the awkwardness of this moment.
Oh, it was so bad. I took one 6 penny nail, I held it against the barn, and somehow I took a whack at that thing, and it held. It stuck in the barn. I'm like, yes, that's great. And I thought, now if I can just get this wire
Oh my.
off my arm, I got it lifted up, and I hung the corner of it on that one tenacious nail.
Tenacious is right.
And you know what? It held. I couldn't believe it. I was so excited. And so I put another nail in, and then I ran down the ladder, shimmied it over a couple of feet, and for the next 45 minutes, I went up and down that ladder, hammering.
Oh.
Thank goodness for native timber. That's all. But you,
Hey, other people won't understand that, but native timber is hard as I mean, you can't hardly drive a nail into it, but when it goes in, it holds. So way to go, yes.
yes, it was great. So anyway, 45 minutes or so later, and guess what? The banner was hung. I was so excited. Now I hadn't put it in yet, but it was starting to get dark. But you need to understand something at this point. All that time I was moving that ladder, the rain is sheeting down from the angle of this roof right onto me in an icy curtain. It was hitting my head down into the collar of this rain slicker. I was soaked to my underwear. I mean, it was so cold. So, anyway, I get down off the ladder. I ran back to the garage, and I got Steve's really long extension cord. And I thought, it's getting dark. If I can just get that thing plugged in before he gets home, it will be perfect. So I the end cord into the extension cord. I ran the extension cord into the barn all the way to the back where the plug is. I plugged that and I ran outside, and it was lit. Oh, it was so beautiful. I mean, I stood there with our two soaking wet barn cats and our little shivering golden retriever who wondered, what in the world is she
That's right.
doing? And I looked at that Messiah sign in the dark
No.
and it just glowed. And that warm feeling I had in my heart, I just stopped because I realized how incredible the real Messiah is, the King of the universe, the real light of the world. My heart was so full. It was so wonderful.
How beautiful that must have been just to not only have put all of the effort into creating it, but now to see that sign manifest way beyond what the work was as to the message of it now. And you're doing it in a place so that all the world in your community could see.
Could see. And I mean, I wondered if the dog and the cats were as excited as I was. It was so beautiful. But I kind of had to shake myself loose from this because it was dark now. And I knew Steve would be there any moment. And I kind of stepped back to survey it. I wanted to make sure, I told you I was a little bit of a perfectionist. I wanted to make sure it was right. And I noticed between the M and the E, there were a few little bumps that had not been properly covered. And I thought, okay, one little tweak, I can do this. So I ran up the ladder one more time. Now, what I'm about to say, you've probably already thought about, okay? But here's what happened. I emptied the water from the pockets of my slicker. They were full of water from the water running off the top of the roof. And I climbed up the aluminum ladder, which I'm holding. I'm up high. I'm holding with one hand. With the other hand, reached in my pocket and I pulled out a wad of tin foil. I reached through the icy rainwater streaming off the metal roof to cover one little bulb, electrical bulb, with a wad of aluminum foil. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I just say the jolt that went through my body should have killed me after a 40-foot drop, but it
Oh.
it didn't. I'm still here to tell the story.
Oh my goodness, how beautiful, how beautiful, how beautiful, though, just the whole thing coming together like that, and you know what? When I hear you tell that, yes, I'm thinking, "She's not gonna do this, she's not gonna do this, she's doing it."
Well, it's amazing what fatigue and exhaustion does to common sense. I
Yes.
I'm I'm not a brain surgeon or anything, but come on, we all know that that's not good. And there was something about that jolt. Now, I came down the ladder. I didn't fall off the ladder. I slid down the ladder. And so if you can imagine a cartoon character with feet,
Yes,
knee, chin bouncing off the rungs, probably what I look like.
yes. But
Yeah,
it stayed up there the whole season?
yes, but well, no, let me finish the story here.
Oh, there's more! Oh, no.
Um, that jolt of electricity kind of snapped me back to reality. And it dawned on me, what am I thinking? I mean, seriously, I can't let Steve see this. If he pulls up the driveway and he sees hundreds of electrical light bulbs heating up on a wire sign hanging on his historical Hoosier barn, he's going to kill me.
Yes.
He's so mad. Ah, so I, as quickly as I could, even though my rubbery legs were a mess, I lunged for the plug to undo the lights, but it was too late because he was home.
Oh,
Can you believe it? Oh my goodness. The reprimand that I got all night long,
yes.
I deserved. I did. But you know what? He he was grateful I was alive.
There's one.
Yeah. He was grateful that his barn did not burn down.
There's 2.
And he was grateful that I tried to do something to
That's
s-
right.
and please him.
Yeah.
So he forgave me. And that night, I climbed into bed. I hurt so badly. And I just, God, that moment, that lighted Messiah in that barn lot with me and the two cats and that dog, seeing your name,
Oh, wow.
it was worth everything, God. Thank you for that moment. Thank you.
That's beautiful.
And you know what? This story could end right here, Keith, and we would be good. We could close up and go home. But that's not the end of the story. So the next day, I dragged myself out of bed and went to work. It was safer to go to work than to stay home. And I worked late that night. When I got in my car, it was already dark and it was cold, and I couldn't wait to get home and get my pajamas on and go back to bed early again. But do you know what? When I rolled through the four-way stop a quarter of a mile from our house, I saw a glow in the western sky, and my husband had climbed up on the barn, taken that sign down, and he had stretched it at the highest point of our hillside between two big sturdy fence posts for everybody to see. He always gave the best surprises.
You know what? When I read that the very first time, my heart was just as warmed by what was on the barn, but then the gift that he gave and, the whole Advent season that you were celebrating is about these incredible gifts that God has given. And so I know we're out of the Advent season, so to speak, right now, but you know what? The gift is not one that's just tied to a moment. It's tied to eternity, and all of a sudden we see this magnificent, symbol of his sacrifice. He didn't wanna get rid of the light, he wanted to go share it in a way that was a little safer. And Denise, you gotta admit, remember, he's climbing up and down that ladder to undo all the things that you did.
Yes. Yes, and he
That is
did.
so beautiful.
It was such a beautiful gift. It was really sweet for him to do that, and I will never, ever forget that and how special it made me feel. It
Oh,
was really
Denise, I'm so glad that you've been given that memory and the ability to communicate it. And that's what when we talk about story mosaics, it's this simple idea is that every one of us has stories. And we just want to be able to create a forum and a place where people can tell their stories because when you tell that story, my heart is warmed, and you know what it does for me too? It challenges me to continue to give gifts like what your husband gave you at that moment.
yeah, yeah,
You had given a beautiful gift, but there was something for him to give into the moment as well.
for sure. And a story, you really said it well, Keith. You know, a story is a gift to the and there's value in a written story, but a spoken story can be shared again and told again. And it's reflective of the storyteller's voice and their heart. And
Uh-huh.
I find myself, I told you my dad was a storyteller. I spent a lot of my life retelling my dad's stories, and he's been gone since 1973. And
Oh my goodness.
I will never forget his stories. They keep him alive for me. Very
It it's interesting you should say that, Denise, because my son will tell me every once in a while, "Hey, dad, I just told one of your stories." And first of all, I don't know about you, Denise, but I know that when my son tells my story, it gets a whole new embellishment. You know what I mean? There's a whole new layer to the story, and that's what makes it so special because then your dad's stories become a little bit of your story as well,
Yeah.
and that is so powerful.
And he was special to me. I lost my mother when I was 3.5, and my dad was almost 70 when I was born. So just let that sink in a minute.
Yes.
But he was a storyteller, and he retired from his career and raised a little girl. and then um, and then he passed away when I was 13. So I had such great stories that he gave me, and that I get to share with members of my family who don't remember him. It's a
Oh,
blessing.
excuse me. You know, I'm gonna ask you to do something, and I'm watching our time as well, so I'm very conscious of where we're at there, but there's a part of your history that, um, we would be remiss if we didn't let the audience in, because your dad was not just a storyteller, he was a part of a community, and I want you to just tell us a little bit, just give us a snapshot of the community that he was a part of and that you have continued in your life, okay? Can you do that?
I would love to.
Oh,
So
thank you.
my dad was born in the 1800s, and he lied about his age to get a job on the railroad. And he was helping to lay tracks and to work on the railroad. And because of that, he knew where the trains went. And so in the early 1900s, when he was done with his job, he just started hopping freight trains.
Oh,
And my dad hoboed for over 20 years. His name was Hobo Bird, because my maiden name was Bird, and he was Hobo Bird, and he rode the rail many years, and he was a hard worker. He would work in the south in the winter months where it was warm, and then in the summertime he'd come up north and work up north. He A lot of the hobo community actually built the courthouses all across America. And I grew up, my dad tells stories about riding freight trains, and so did my older sister. And uh, she actually wrote a wonderful book full of stories about the American hobo, and it's called Den and Ben. And for years, she's gone to the National Hobo Convention in Britt, Iowa, and I've been going for quite a few years now too, kind of as a way to honor our dad.
yes.
Gone for years, but I'm telling you what, the hobo community, they're storytellers, they're singers, they're wonderful. And in 1990, she was actually, she won the honor of the National Hobo Queen, and she was given that honor at Iowa. And was really proud of her for that. And I felt like it was just a way for her to carry dad's legacy on. And
Yeah, I
then
think what people will not understand is and you've kind of helped people understand this a little bit better because you continue this writing part of who you are. You've helped people understand the vocabulary of the hobo community because I think ingrained in a lot of our minds are some images of hoboing that do not square with your image and your understanding. Would that be a fair statement?
very much so. Most people would think of hobos as transient, maybe kind of lazy, maybe outcasts. But the truth is, they were very organized and they were hard workers, and they traveled. They traveled by train, but they were a big part of the American workforce. And if somebody wasn't working, if they were traveling and not working, they're not a hobo.
Wow.
They're considered something else, but they're not a hobo. In fact, the hobos actually organized one first work union in America called Tourist Union number 66. I'm sorry. And people don't know that. They were organized. They wrote newspapers.
Yeah, you know what, Denise, I'm gonna have to have you repeat that tourist number because it cut out because I was talking over you, so say that again.
It's Tourist Union number 63, and it was one of the first organized unions in America. They,
You know
and they,
what's
I'm
go
sorry,
ahead.
they hold the National Hobo Convention every year in August, and they've been doing it since 1900.
Wow.
Yeah.
Hey, what we're gonna do, you know what? We're gonna close this part of our Story Mosaics time together here, but I'm gonna ask you to come back because you've done some writing on that. And, you know, every fourth Tuesday, we do a little bit of a how to segment. And since you've done some writing and some publishing on that, and I've had the opportunity to do some publishing, I would like to have you come back and talk with our audience about what it is to and the how-tos of publishing, and this is gonna be something that will be beneficial for them, so that it'll be 2 Tuesdays, from now, but, we'll come back and we'll have that in the future. Uh, Denise, what what a kick and what a hoot this has been just to hear you tell your story and to see the joy and the effervescence on your face. And you know what? Here's the thing for me is I know it's tied not only to your personality, it's tied to your spirit and your love for God. And it comes through so clearly. And that's what we celebrate too, because um, honestly, when I started to create the Story Mosaics concept, I thought it would just be about stories, but God kept bringing back and saying, "No, it's my story. It's my story." And every story in people's lives, they're His stories. And then when that knock, knock, knock dawned on me, and I finally understood He wants us to tell His story. Um, it's reshaped my guests. It's reshaped the way we tell the stories, and um, they all won't have just one single thread. They come from all different walks of life, but they come in such a way that they honor him. So thanks so much for joining us. I'm going to give this some people just a real quick. Don't forget, folks, to go on storymosaics.com and you can, first of all, one of the things I haven't seen as many of you doing because I haven't mentioned it is you can get a free book out there and it's an ebook that they can download and that way you can it's 5 stories, several of them were published, some of them were not published, and it gives you an idea of how to construct and how to structure stories, and then also, we just want you to hear your stories. Write it, tell it, and then you will have just an opportunity like Denise to come on and share your stories. So, thanks so much today. Write us at story.mosaics1@gmail.com, and, we'll look forward to that future. Denise, thanks for being with us today on Story Mosaics.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Yeah, it's been great. It was great.